Sairam everyone, and welcome back to our history class revision. Let's continue with our lesson, Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Let's continue with the First World War and the Russian Empire. Okay, so we will start with the First World War and the Russian Empire. It was on 1914 that the First World War broke out between two European alliance groups. Now, here I'll show you in the map. Children, this map you have in your textbook also. You may be having the same map in your map activity book. Okay, this types of question can be asked. This map can be asked for the exam too. So pay attention over here. All the orange shaded area is Central Power. Central Power belonged Germany. Here is Germany. Austria. This is Austria. And Turkey. Okay, these three countries belong to Central Power. Now, France, here is France, Britain, all the green shaded area, okay, Russia belong to Allied power. But later, children, Italy, here is Italy, yes, and Romania, here, where is Romania? Yes, here it is. Join them, okay, later. Join which power? They join the Allied power. Now, Tsar Nicholas, he was initially supported by the people of Russia to fight war. Okay, but as the war continued, this Tsar refused to consult main parties in the Duma. And what happened? People's support to Tsar started reducing. Anti-German sentiments could be seen all over. St. Petersburg, which was a German name, was renamed as Petrograd. As we all know, Tsarina Alexandra, wife of Tsar Nicholas II, was from German origin. Her origin and also poor advice of the monk was a Rasputin. These two things made the autocracy unpopular. Here you can see Petersburg was renamed as Petrograd. She is Tsarina Alexandra and he is Rasputin. Now, Russia actually faced a very difficult situation during the First World War, children. See, on both the fronts, Eastern France and Western France, war was fought. The war on the Eastern Front was different from that of the Western Front. In the West, let me talk about the West. Army fought from trenches and these trenches stretched along the Eastern France. Whereas in the East, I'm talking about the East now, armies, they moved a great deal and they fought battles, leaving large casualties. Defeats were shocking and demoralizing. Russian army lost badly, in Germany and in Austria That was between 1914 and 1916. There were 7 million casualties by 1917. As the army retreated, they destroyed crops and buildings to prevent the army from being able to live off the land. This destruction of crops and buildings led over 3 million refugees in Russia. The situation discredited the government. That is, the government was blamed for this situation in Russia. Not only the government, but also the Tsar was blamed. Soldiers, they did not wish to fight the wars, such wars. Now, Russia's industries were also badly affected because of these wars. Russia's own industries were very few in number, and the country was cut off from other supplies of industrial goods by Germans. It was the Germans who controlled the Baltic Sea, from where the goods were imported to Russia. Industrial equipment disintegrated more rapidly in Russia. By 1916, railway lines in Russia began to break down. Now, able-bodied men were called to fight wars. Nice, healthy, abled men. And what was the reason? The reason was that there was labor shortage because men joined the army. And small workshops producing essentials were also shut down because the people, the healthy people, able-bodied, that is healthy people, young people, they were called to join the army. Okay, now large supplies of grains were sent to feed the army. Am I right? Thus, the bread and flour became scarce for the people in the city. All this tells us about the situation in Russia, right, children? What happened over there? Here you can answer questions like what was the situation, or what situation did Russia face during the First World War, or the time when this question is asked. You can include all these points, or you may be asked questions like how did the First World War affect the industry in Russia. That time you can add up write that points related to industries, but do see the marks. If it carries 3 marks, your answer should have 3 points. If the question carries 5 marks, your answer should carry 5 points. Accordingly, you elaborate your answers, but relevant points should be mentioned. Now, let us move on to February Revolution in Petrograd. See, children, listen carefully. These questions you may have in your exams. You can attempt this question if you listen to my lesson properly. Okay. Now, we will revise the main events that took place in February in Russia. Okay. First event was in winter of 1917. Conditions in the Petrograd. Petrograd was the capital of Russia, Okay, the situation in Petrograd, the conditions in this Petrograd was grim. There had been exceptional frost and also heavy snow. And what happened? This aggravated food problem. Shortage of food problem arose, especially in the workers' quarters. Shortage of food was felt very deeply. Okay, now parliamentarians were wishing to preserve the elected government. They were opposed against the Tsar's desire. What was the Tsar's desire? His desire was to dissolve the Duma so that his powers were not taken away or restricted. The children, we are going to talk about the next event that took place in February, right? On February 22nd, a lockout took place at a factory on the right bank of river Neva. Next day, immediately, in 50 factories, workers, they called out strike in support of the workers who went on strike. As a sympathy, even women played a very important role in strikes. In many factories, women led strikes. Yes, and now these workers who were demonstrating, they crossed from the factory quarters to the center of the capital, that is Nevsky Prospect. Soon, government came into action. And what did the government do? Government imposed curfew. By the evening, these demonstrating workers dispersed. They went back to their house, to their homes. But they came back on 24th and 25th of February. Now let's see the next point. Okay, they also came in the streets of the left bank of the river Neva. That was on 26th February, yes. On the right bank were the fashionable areas. It was the fashionable people living, the rich people. Even the Winter Palace was on the left bank of river Neva, on the left side of the river Neva, right? Now, there were also some official buildings over there. They ransacked this demonstrator. They ransacked this police headquarters on 27th February. The streets thronged with people who were raising slogans. Slogans about bread, about wages, about better hours, and also about democracy. So, the revolutionary events that took place in the month of February. Now let's see the effects of the February Revolution. Okay, now first one, I'll begin with the first one. Military commanders of the Tsar, they advised the Tsar, okay, to abdicate. And the Tsar followed their advice and he abdicated on 2nd March. Soviet leaders and also the Duma leaders, they formed a government. And this government was called as provisional government to rule the country. Okay. Now the second effect was, first effect, the Tsar was thrown out. Okay, a new government came into power that was called as provisional government. Now the next one is Russia's future would be decided by a Constituent Assembly which was elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage, that is universal adult franchise. Petrogard had led the February Revolution. Revolution first began in Petrograd, right, in the month of February. Now that brought down the monarchy in France in 1917, right now. We saw February Revolution, the event that took place in February and its effect. Now if question based on these points, write down the events that took place, or write about the February Revolution and the effects of February Revolution. I suppose you will be able to write now. Now let us see. Let's move further. Let us see what happened after February. Okay. Provisional government, which then came into power after the monarch was thrown out. After the fall of the monarch, this provisional government came to power to rule the country. But the army officials, the landlords, and the industrialists, all rich society, rich people, were influential in the provisional government. But the liberals and also the socialists among them worked towards an elected government. Restrictions on public meetings and association were removed. Now, Soviets were set up everywhere. Soviets were set up everywhere. Though there was no common system of election. Lenin, who was now the leader of Bolsheviks, okay, he returned to Russia. That was in the year 1970, in the month of April 1917, from exile. He and the Bolsheviks had opposed the war since 1914. Lenin felt that it was time for the Soviets to take over power. Okay? He put 3 demands, which were known as Lenin's April thesis. Okay? In this thesis, we will see about this thesis, which were the 3 demands made by Lenin. Okay? The first one was the war, First World War, to be brought to an end, to be closed. Second was land be transferred to the peasants. Land that was owned by the church people, by the nobility. Yes, to be transferred to the peasants. And the third one was, the third demand was, the banks be nationalized. These 3 demands were Lenin's April thesis. Question based on this will be asked. You should be able to write all these 3 points. See the marks again. If it is of 3 marks, 5 marks, you have to elaborate it. Yeah. Now, Lenin also argued that the Bolshevik party should be renamed as the Communist Party. The Bolshevik party should rename itself as Communist Party to indicate its new radical aims. Even workers, everyone started supporting Bolshevik and Lenin. Even the workers' movement spread. In industrial areas, factory committees were formed and they questioned the industrialists, the way the factory was run. Also, trade unions increased in numbers. Also, in army, soldiers' committee was formed. So you see, everywhere people began to form associations, form committees. Now, this provisional government saw its power was reducing and the influence of Bolshevik was growing, was increasing. So government decided to take stern steps, measures to stop this Bolsheviks, this revolutions. It resisted all attempts by workers to run factories and started arresting leaders. Many Bolshevik leaders, they had to hide or flee away because there was a fear they will be arrested and put behind bars. Now, in the countryside, this was in fact is what we talked about. Now let's see what was the thing in the countryside. In the countryside, peasants and their socialist revolutionary leaders worked for redistribution of land that was owned by the nobles and the church and also the landlords. To handle this land, to handle this situation, this land problem, land committees were formed. These peasants, they seized the land between the month of July and September of 1917. Now let's talk about the revolution of October 1917. Let's see what happened in the month of October, same year, 1917. See, the October Revolution occurred due to the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks. And who was the leader of Bolshevik? Come on, tell me. Yes, Lenin. Lenin feared the provisional government. He was scared, he was feared that the provisional government would set up a dictatorship in Russia. In September, he began discussions. Discussions were held for an uprising against this provisional government. All the supporters of Bolsheviks in the army, in Soviets, and also in factories were brought together. Now what happened was, on October 16, 1917, Lenin, he persuaded the Petrogard Soviet and the Bolshevik party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet that was under Leon Trotskii to organize the seizure. The date of the event was kept secret. Now, the uprising began on 24th October. Military men loyal to the provisional government under Kerensky seized the building of two Bolshevik newspapers pro-government troops were sent to take over telephone and telegraph offices. And very important, even troops were sent to protect the Winter Palace. In a swift response, what did the Military Revolutionary Committee do? They ordered its supporters to seize the government offices and also to arrest ministers. Later in the day, the ship Aurora shelled the Winter Palace. Ships sailed down the river Neva and took over many military points, various military points. And by the nightfall, the city was under the committee's control and minister had surrendered. Uprising took place in many other cities, and by December, these Bolsheviks, they became powerful and successful in controlling the Moscow Petrograd. Now children, let's see effects of this October Revolution. The October Revolution, it marked the beginning of Lenin's rule over Soviets, right? We saw, no? The Bolshevik Party was renamed as Russian Communist Party. Thus, the first Communist Party regime was established in Russia. Most industries and banks were nationalized in November 1917. Land was declared as the social property, and the peasants were allowed to seize the land of the nobility. In cities, Bolsheviks enforced the partition of large houses according to the family requirement. They banned the use of all titles of aristocracy. Bolsheviks made peace treaty with Germany at Lockout in March 1918. Bolshevik became the only party to participate in the election to the All-Russian Congress of Soviets, which became the parliament of the country. Russia thus became a one-party state. Children, I'll stop over here. We will continue with our revision in the next class. Till then, take care. Thank you.